In this video, I'm going to show you how to install SQL Server onto your Windows device, and also how to ultimately install and access SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server is a Microsoft product, and therefore it needs to be installed on a Windows device. So if you have a Mac, or if you don't have a computer, you'll ultimately have to access a SQL Server through other means. So the way to kind of start, right, is if you're downloading SQL Server for your own purposes. This isn't really related to work or anything like that. And so what you're really looking for is the SQL Server Express product, which is different than your the enterprise or business deployment. So we'll just search for SQL Server Express, and you'll see here we have the SQL Server downloads link at the top. We'll see if how this goes. And you'll see here at the top, it says try SQL Server on premises or in the cloud. And this is really for people who are looking to use SQL Server in the workplace. They have a company, they might not have SQL Server, a SQL Server. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, you're going to see or download a free specialized edition. There's the developer edition, and then there's the Express edition. And I've always used the Express edition. I think it's easier. It's easier for learning SQL, learning how to to pull in a sample database like AdventureWorks to manipulate it. Really, I've found everything I need through this deployment. The developer has obviously full featured. So if you're looking, if you're more of a developer, database design and that sort of thing, you might want to look for that deployment. So I'm just going to download now. And it downloaded. You'll see that I don't currently have Microsoft. It would appear under Microsoft SQL Server installed already. And so if you already have it installed, or if you have a prior version installed, this is SQL Server 2019. You might run into some different prompts ultimately through the installation process. But I'm going to essentially run it now and say yes, I want to make changes to my hard drive, and then it's getting things ready. What you want, unless you really have done this before and have ideas about why you want to customize the installation process, really all you need to do is select basic. And this will probably take a minute, so I'm going to pause the video until it's through the installation process. And I do want to say, so there's, you have to accept the license terms, but there you might be prompted for restarts as well. So be aware that, just do what it says basically. And so I'm going to hit, and you obviously have an install location. I'm just going to hit install, and then I'm going to pause the video. All right, the SQL Server Express edition has successfully installed. You'll get this message. It will give you some information like an instance name, which is it won't really be important for any of the videos that I'm going to create, but it is important to know that we're going to access the SQL Server through a SQL Express instance, and so there are various parameters here on where that instance or that local server instance is. Or parameters related to it. There's some other kind of information here, but ultimately you won't need to you won't need to copy it. You're more than free to copy it and save it elsewhere. But there's a couple of things that you want to do after this step. Well, actually, just one thing. But one thing you can do is just hit connect now. And you'll see you actually get the command prompt, right? And this is not the way that people usually work with SQL Server. You're going to ultimately want a graphical user interface, which is kind of a point and click software application that allows you to work with the SQL Server in a better fashion than a command prompt. So I'm going to exit out of this. And you can ultimately click here, install SSMS, or you can search for the SSMS software. And so, what does SSMS mean? It's SQL Server Management Studio, which is a graphical user interface, essentially an integrated development environment, which is an IDE. One of those is one piece of that is the graphical user interface, but it really gives you a full suite of tools and other applications for working with the SQL Server. And so all you need to do is download it. You can obviously search for this with Google, and it should take you to this page. And so I'm going to download it, and then I'm going to start the installation. And I'll pause it once we get to a point. Pause the video once we get to a point where it's going to run in the background for a bit. Again, if you're prompted for a restart your machine. And it does take a minute to download. It seems a bit bigger than the Express. It's about a half a gig. So wait a second, and it's done. So we'll start that up. And we'll click yes. And basically, it'll show you the installation path. Usually default is fine, so just press install. And there won't be any other prompts related to this except possibly to restart. So I'm going to pause the video now. Okay, you can see that the setup completed. So I'm going to close this window. And then essentially, how do you get to SQL Server right after you've installed these things? So navigate to your start menu. You'll see under Microsoft, you'll see Microsoft SQL Server, which will have a configuration manager, an import and export data wizard, and then you'll also see Microsoft SQL Server Tools 18, and this is where SQL Server Management Studio is located. And so you'll click on that, and then you'll see Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. I'm going to open it. It's going to take a minute to come up, and then I'll basically share once it's loaded. So you'll see that SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS, opened, and the first thing that you'll get prompted with is a Connect to Server dialog box. I'm not going to go over the features, the inputs for this particular for this prompt in this particular video. So see my next video on essentially what does this server name mean? What should you put in here if it's blank, etc.